Welcome back. In just a few hours, President Joe Biden will be on his way to South Carolina. The president is slated to deliver a speech promoting his massive infrastructure agenda. South Carolina, of course, a key state for this president. Biden won the Democratic primary there in 2020 after falling behind these states, his campaign seemingly on life support. Then the turnaround. Earlier this year, Biden pushed for a plan to make South Carolina the first state in the lineup for the Democratic primaries. Joining us now, a man who spent plenty of time in South Carolina, NBC News White House correspondent Mike Memley. So let's start there before we get to the politics of the primaries, let's just simply start, Mike, with the president's trip today. And what is he trying to push? And how is it, in some ways, sort of a subtle bit of campaigning?
Yeah, Jonathan, obviously this is part of the White House's Invest in America tour, meant to highlight all the different pieces of economic legislation the president has signed into law and the ways in which it's creating a manufacturing boom, as the White House argues, in this country. And South Carolina is an example of that. He's going to be talking about a new partnership between Enphase Energy and Flex that will create 600 new jobs in South Carolina, 1,800 in the U.S. It's part of $11 billion, the White House says, in manufacturing and clean energy investments in South Carolina as a result of these laws. Part of the message here, as we get more into a campaign cycle here, is that Republicans in South Carolina and across the country voted against these economic investments. And even though, as the president has vowed to be a president for all Americans, a lot of the benefits of these economic legislation are happening in red states. They're happening in red counties. And so he's really trying to increasingly not just tout his own accomplishments, but call out Republicans for opposing them.
Yeah, that's become a favorite play of his, especially when he can point out Republicans touting the achievements of the bills without actually having, of course, voted for them. So, Mike, as you well know, and as we mentioned a moment ago, the president's remarkable comeback in the 2020 primary process really started in South Carolina, help from an endorsement from Congressman Jim Clyburn there. Look, South Carolina is not in play in 2024. It's a red state, but it's still politics loom large here because the way the White House pushed the DNC to change its calendar to put South Carolina first. But there's been some blowback from Iowa and New Hampshire. Give us the latest as to where things stand.
Yeah, Jonathan, I remember full well. I was in Manchester on primary day in 2020 when then candidate Joe Biden made that stunning announcement that he would leave the state and go to South Carolina on the night of the New Hampshire primary to sort of signal where his focus was going to be. As he argued, the diversity of the party was better reflected in a state like South Carolina than Iowa and New Hampshire, where, of course, he finished in the back of the pack. Now, what's interesting here, as New Hampshire Democrats they expected Iowa to lose its place at the beginning of the calendar, but they were really blindsided by the president's decision to put South Carolina at the front of the line. And there were a lot of arguments on the politics that they made about why New Hampshire should stay first. But the real issue here is New Hampshire state law. New Hampshire has been the first in the nation primary for 100 years because the New Hampshire state law says it has to be. It has to come 7 days before any other election. And the New Hampshire Secretary of State, now Dave Scanlon, for a long time Bill Gardner, has been masterful at maneuvering to keep New Hampshire at the head of the pack. So in every likelihood, despite this new DNC calendar, New Hampshire will be the first in the nation sometime in January. And the Biden campaign is going to face a real interesting challenge. They can either just simply not have the president file for re-election, which guarantees somebody else, likely RFK Jr., will win that primary, or maybe they need to sort of push a write-in campaign. But that's no guarantee of success. One top New Hampshire Democrat told me that would be incredibly expensive in order to be successful. And so either way, the president's going to have some tough headlines on the first in the nation primary when it happens next January. Campaign advisors say, listen, the big story you're going to cover out of New Hampshire is who wins the Republican primary. We'll take our lumps, but ultimately this is not going to be an issue.
So, Mike, real quick, I mean, Marianne Williamson dismissed out of hand as a Democratic challenger. There's been talk about Cornel West, where he might fit in. But Robert F. Kennedy Jr. at least has name recognition. I mean, even though so many of his views are completely, frankly, out of control and wrong. How does the Biden team looking at him?
Officially, they don't acknowledge him, but there's really this point that the more people hear about his views, the more unpalatable that he will be to Democratic voters. The issue is, if you look at the 2012 election, Barack Obama only got about 81% of the vote when he faced really no credible challenger in New Hampshire. And so it's going to be an uncomfortable situation no matter what, as we're going to see RFK get really double-digit margins in some of these low turnout primaries throughout the cycle.
All right. Well, we appreciate the reporting as always. NBC News White House correspondent Mike Memoli. And thank you very much. And of course, we'll have coverage of the president's trip to South Carolina later today.